of affliction sweep over the soul, and sunlight is hidden from your view. Whenever you are tempted to fret or to complain, just think of God's goodness to you. Jesus, keep me near the cross. Oh Lord, that's a precious fountain. Y'all go old school with me. It's free to all the healing stream, and it flows from Calvary mountain. I need to be near the cross, near the cross. Oh, be my glory. It's till my raptured soul shall find there will be rest. You can't get it over here. Beyond the river. Lord, today, settle our spirits. Place us in the right place so that the glory of the Lord will shine through. God, I thank you for this, one of the greatest expressions of your goodness to me, to allow me to come back home. Lord, when I've said all that you've nudged for this assignment, nudge me gently, place me in my seat. I promise to give you the glory in the name of Jesus. Amen. And thank God. It's good to be home in the historical Salem Institutional Baptist Church. And my prayer and desire is that your generation is as loving and as kind to us as our generation was. I hope to always hear that the families of the Salem church are more than just church members. I remember one Sunday morning when our church was new. And I was one of the unique kids that my church moved to my neighborhood. Y'all will catch that after a while. Salem was on what we call the prairie. And it moved 7 houses from where we worshiped. I remember, and no one has ever told you this, but one Sunday morning I went into the men's bathroom, and there a big man came behind me, and he said, "Do you know who I am?" I looked at him, and he had a lapel on his coat, and he says, "I'm Cassius Clay, and I'm preaching here this morning." You know that, did you, Todd? After he named himself Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay preached here. And I looked up at him just for the few moments that I had with him alone in the men's bathroom. He asked me again, "Do you know who I am?" Dr. L. Butler Nelson was our pastor. And he was so diversified and in his spirit, even then, 50 years ago, he had such vision that he could let a Muslim preach in a Baptist church. Salem, y'all are somebody. Even though his messages was all about black coffee being the strongest and black cherries being the sweetest, and all it wouldn't have nothing to do with Jesus. And he never came back to preach here no more either. I remember one Monday night, deacons, in a deacons meeting. Dad ran home and the ambulance passed the street, and I said, "What's happened?" He said, "A deacon died here tonight. Deacon Hopkins." I don't know what the business meeting was. I don't know if they were trying to put the preacher out or what. But you have such a rich history. And if you're kind enough to the older members of your church to just put up with them every now and then, they will be able to perhaps pass something along to you that will help you along the way. I'm always fascinated when I look at this Jewish family in Genesis, this family of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jake is really my favorite character, because here in the 32nd chapter of Genesis, and you're going to need your Bibles, your iPad, because you don't want to miss this one here. He says here in this 24th verse, 32nd chapter, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of dawn. You may be seated. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled with him all night. I want to thank you, Salem, for honoring the life of my mother. When she makes her way, anytime she sees a car on this side of Salem, it's Sunday. And with her dementia, she's stuck on Sunday. So if she just ever happens to stroll down here and it's not on a Sunday, have a prayer and send her back up there to 3906 Crozier, because she's stuck on Salem and stuck on Sundays. And a text, if you look at it, it deals with us. And if I had to tag a message for you, it would be feeding your faith over your phobias. Feeding your faith over your phobias. Every one of us have, I don't care how old you are, or how young you are, how rich you are, educated or illiterate, you have some phobias. We don't talk about them because we hide them under the shelf and we keep them in track. Some of you take care of your phobias better than you do your blood pressure. And so the fear of our phobias come out. Some of us have what we call acrophobia. And acrophobia is the fear of water. Everybody going on a cruise, but you ain't going. There is aquaphobia. Phobia, everybody flies to Vegas, but you gonna catch the bus. Because your phobias says that there is a fear of flying, and the first time you get on a plane, it's going to crash. There is, in Joseph's case, claustrophobia. Claustrophobia, you can tell when folk are claustrophobic because when they come into a room, they mark an exit. And they sit as close as they can to the exit because they're uncomfortable being in places with too many people, and they're uncomfortable, so they take care of their phobias. Jacob had a phobia called monophobia. And Jacob's phobia was so intense that he would pimp his family. He would do whatever it took to keep his phobia from taking place. So in these verses of this 32 chapter, we find where he's still running from his past. Is there anybody here that can't get to tomorrow for yesterday? And so he's running from his past, and he's got 11 boys and 4 women with him. And here they are, and finally they have settled down at Uncle Laban's house. And Jake sends word. You know that there's something about a fellow who can't talk to you face to face. He's always sending his children to go tell my brother this and then tricking them. Watch this. He goes and tells he goes and tells Esau to meet me at Laban's house, running from his phobias. And so the text says that he begins to send a lot of stuff. Now Laban sends him a word back in the 6th verse of that thing, and the messenger turned to Jacob saying, we came to your brother Esau, and I also found he coming to meet you. And what does it say? And he's bringing 400 men. Now I discovered that if you're a car thief, you got every alarm on your car. Because your expectance is that the worst is going to happen. And Laman, he just sent Laman enough for a barbecue for 400 men. And so as Esau gets to Laman's house, Jacob decides to make a move. Laman is expecting, Esau's expecting to meet his brother. And I want you to catch this. A lot of times, your phobia is not the same phobia that somebody else has. Preach, Foster. Somebody may be afraid to climb trees, but you like a monkey. Some folk can sleep with the light on, but you can't sleep with it off. And so all of our phobias are different. And here, Jake had a phobia of being left alone. And his family loved him so much. Can you imagine every time they settled down, he said, let's go. Every time they finally got the children in school, they had to transfer and go to another school. And here's the real problem. He was missing a relationship with his children and their nephews and their uncles and their aunties, all because of him and his brother. What they didn't know, Esau was black. And he was a twin also. So here, the family finally settles down. They finally get a chance to all get 11 boys in a room. His 2 wives and their servants, and they're all sitting there. And all of a sudden, Jacob said, in the middle of a night, we got to go. Oh, Daddy. We can't meet nobody in school. It would be different if you were in the military and we had to move around, or if you had a corporate job that carried you. No, we running for nothing. Because your phobia is not our phobia. And sometimes when you are a user of people, you will use people to get what you want done for you. Home alone, y'all. Finally, I believe the text does not say it the way we've always read. We've always said, and Jacob was left alone. No, they left Jacob alone. They stopped Jacob by the rehab center of faith and said, you're going to have to go to God's detox program, and it's going to last all night long. His worst fear was about on him now. Nothing he could do. He had been hiding his phobia so well because he never spent any time alone. You see, he was a smart man. Watch this, Pastor. He knew that as long as he had his children around him, and if he had his nephew, that if Esau ever caught up with him, Esau wasn't going to bust a cap on him right there. Because he was too much of a man. But what he didn't know, Esau never had a problem in the first place. When sin gets on you, it makes you think that everything around you is dirty. The word says here, he took his phobia and he wrestled all night long. I remember my daddy. He would sit on the side of the bed at night, and he'd have a spiral pad that went up. You know, the pads that go up. And I said, Dad, what are you doing? He says, I'm wrestling with these bills. And somebody knows what it is to be wrestling with something that's your greatest phobia. You're wrestling with aquaphobia because you don't want to fly nowhere. You're wrestling with hydrophobia because you are afraid of water. You're wrestling with necrophobia because you are afraid of dead people. That's some of you right now. Do anything you can, but you ain't going to the funeral. Because your phobias have outseeded your fears, and your faith is somewhere where it ought not be. It's when you learn who God is and who God is in your life, you can face all of the phobias that you go through. At the One Main Bank, never will forget, a lady that used to go to Salem was a clerk. One Main Bank opened up. She worked there 15 years. And I remember Clarone, Davis, Margaret and Davis, all those people that Michael's kinfolk, she used to tell the lady she had the prettiest legs in town. And for 15 years, the first 5 years at the One Main Bank, she worked on the 5th floor. She would always come in early. She would always leave late. And after 10 years, the firm got bigger, and they moved to a bigger suite on the 15th floor. She still would come in early. every morning. And when she hit that floor, she looked like she had just stepped out of an oasis. But she never told anybody she had a phobia. And the phobia was that she wasn't going to get on the elevator. 15 years, she learned how to take care of herself as she moved up and down the stairs. Everybody went to break. She didn't take no break. She stayed in the lunchroom. 15 years, one of the best employees in the world. But she didn't tell nobody she had a phobia. She handled her phobia. She had the right kind of shoes, wore the right kind of tennis, made provisions for herself because she had to get to work and her phobia could not mess her job up. One day right after 9/11, a fire broke out at the One Main Place Bank. And as the fire marshal and the alarms were going off, everybody was panicking. This lady was headed toward the exit, and he said, "You can't go there because that's where the fire is starting. It's already on the 5th floor, swirling its way up to us, and you have one or two options, ma'am. I don't have time to play with you today. You're going to either stay up here on your own because there are 72 floors in One Main Bank. And you just on the 15th. I got some other folk to save here. Ain't nobody can get on this elevator but elderly people, women, and children. Are you going or not?" This lady just never been on an elevator in her life. Didn't know what it looked like because she had always taken the stairwell. He pushed her in the elevator and that door closed. She began to perspire. Anybody here? She began to cry a little bit, but she stood there as the elevator was packed like sardines. Little bitty girl saw her. She said, "Ma'am, you're struggling, aren't you?" She said, "I'll be all right." The little girl said, "Breathe in and out." She did. She felt a little better. The little girl said, "Do you need some light?" And I be doggone, little girl walked up there and just hit all the buttons. She said, "I do this when I'm on the elevator by myself." She said, "You ride the elevator by yourself?" She said, "Yeah, all the time. My mama works on the 20th floor. And when I get out of school, I open the door, I meet people. I've been riding this elevator for 20 years. You ain't but 7 years. You've been riding." She said, "Give me your hand, ma'am." And every time that elevator went down and hit one floor, her stomach would just growl. And the little girl would play and jump up and down. The woman said, "Don't do that." And the door would open and close 15 times. It would have been easy for her phobia had she just had to go from 20 to 1. But she had to go 14, 13, her agony. And when she got to the mezzanine floor of the One Main Bank, when she opened up the door and rushed out, she didn't even know they had a concierge. 20 years, she never knew that they had a food court. She never knew that they had beautiful flowers and the water arrangement because she would always come in from the basement, make her way through the stairwell and back down when she got off of work. Let me tell you, your phobia will keep you from missing some good stuff in life. When your phobias are greater than your faith. It says that he wrestled all night long. And in his wrestling, he got injured. Somebody right now, you're hurting right now. You're hurting because somebody's done something to you. You're hurting because you've done something to somebody. You're hurting because you've been mistreated. Your guard was let down, and now you're injured. And the Bible says all he could do was just hold on. Hold on. When I thought about that, I thought about Brother Levine. I'm just holding on. I'm holding on to my faith as Jacob is in he said, man, let me tell you, he simply touched the hollow of his hip. He said, you know how good God is? I could have knocked you out. I've been here all night trying to preach hell out of you. I've been here trying to shake sense into you. I've been trying to pin you down to get you to submit. But you have prevailed, and now it's simply time for me to go. Sometimes the greatest people that we are fussing with and arguing with and wrestling with are the people who are really trying to help us. This was simply God's physical therapist. He was not part of the problem. He was not part of the plan. He was simply to sit there and let Jake go through his detoxic period. And if we came through his detoxic period, he may have been a better person, but he continued to hold on. Because when you dirty, you just dirty. The fight is over, y'all. The bell has rung. The clocks are out. And here Jacob is still holding on. You see, he couldn't do the rope-a-dope no more. He couldn't do the stick and jab no more. He couldn't do all of his funny little cute because he was injured. And sometimes when you get injured, all you can do is just hold on. Jake just held on. But watch this. At the end of the daybreak, when the fight was over, he still had a bad spirit. Look what he says. I ain't letting you go till you bless me. He's still in it for himself. My dears, if your phobias direct your life and change the course of what you do, it's because you have fueled your phobia greater than your faith. Because every time you look at your phobia, you ought to tell your phobia, greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. When you look at your phobia again, you ought to tell him, the Bible told me that if God be for me, he's more than the world against me. When you look at your phobia again, tell your phobia that when I'm weak, that's when I'm strong. I can go through this because if God holds my hand like the little girl does on the elevator, I'll get through this. Some of you all have broken some of your phobias and you're flying all over the world now. You wouldn't get on a ship. Now they got you on every cruise. They got a sail going because you learned how to trust and depend on God. Jacob, his worst fear was being alone. And I believe that he wouldn't let the angel alone was because his phobia was still there. Had he let the angel go, y'all catch this now. Had he let the angel go, he would have still had to deal with his phobia. So he said, I'm not going to let you go. He said, do what? Bless you. Jacob, what's your name, boy? I've been fighting with you all night, and you're not even a worthy opponent. I ain't asked you your name. Let me tell you, I bet you Holyfield and all them other boxers, they know who they're fighting. Jacob was such a non-opponent that he wrestled all night. And the man said, hold it. I can't bless you. Finally, check this. There are times in our lives where we're not blessable. Let me say it again. You didn't catch it. There are times in my life when I don't care what blessings came my way, they wouldn't stay. Because I was not blessable. He said, Jacob, I heard about you. And it's going to be hard to bless you with your name. Because your name is trickster. Your name is liar. Your name is deceiver. Your name means that whenever you come around, somebody going to get the bad. It's going to be hard to bless you with the name that you can. Some of us want God's blessing, but we don't want God's change. And so what he says here in the text, that if I'm going to really bless you and for you to be blessed, you done stole everybody. You wanted the birthright, now you want the blessing. Church, I'd rather have the blessing any day than to have the birthright. But when you have the blessing of God, you walk through stuff, come out the other end, and you don't look like what you've gone through. When you learn to feed your faith over your phobias, you will begin to say stuff like, if God be for me, I can handle this. Some of you all won't go to a dentist because of your phobia. Raggedy mouth. When we learn how to feel our phobias. And finally, when you look at the text, the very thing that he was feared for was the stuff he kept at. Can you imagine how many times he done told his wife, leave me alone? Jacob, I got this. Jacob, when can I meet my Uncle Esau? Don't worry about this. I got this. You done told folk who really love you to leave you alone. People who have your best interest, and your children will do it all the time. When you're trying to help them get through something, leave me alone. And so they did just what he asked for. Sometimes folk have to leave you alone so that God can wrestle with you. And you can't just change at 11 o'clock. Todd can preach you all day long, but until you have that integrity wrestling match with God, you'll always be I don't care if you get baptized every time you come to church, you're just going to be a wet devil. So Salem, as I leave today, learn how to fuel your faith over those phobias. Phobia is not a God thing. Because while you having a phobia about flying, 100,000 folk are flying every day. While you're having a phobia about not getting on a cruise, baby, they flying all the taking ships all over the world. And when you hear about one go down, it satisfies your phobia, but your faith ought to be filled in Christ. As I leave you today, when I look at this text, it says, and Jacob was left alone. Sometimes my mother's greatest fear at home is when I leave and go to my home and come back, or she stays with me, and her fear is being at home. She called me the other day and she says, Junior, is everybody dead? I said, that's what you mean, but I just woke up. I want to know. That was her way of saying where you are. She said the other day to my pastor, Todd, she says, she reads the paper and she says, I just hope Todd don't change like his daddy. she kept, I'm going to tell it. Yeah, I said, I hope he do. Because if he don't change on them, this is for you, Pat, they're going to change on you. When you can't preach like you preaching now, they'll change on you. When you can't run around and you're not energetic and don't have that stamina. So if you don't change on them, they will change on you. You have no idea when we look at the generational part of this church. We expect this out of Todd because that's his pastor over there. When you are mentored by an Abraham Campbell, you can't preach like you coming out of no paper sack. Yeah. Finally, before I take my seat, I thank God that as we move from phobia to faith, you'll always remember that the Lord will take care of you. It's nothing that the church can do to ever move you out of the fellowship of Christ. Stay on in the church. I mean, when you mess up, stay in the church. When you let your family down, stay in the church. because there are no phobias in God's house. One of these days, church, it will not be very long. You're going to look for me and I'll be gone. But don't worry about the Fosters, because we're somewhere around God's throne. Aren't you glad that when you were not fit to live and too mean to die, God stepped in and said, anything you're fearing, remember, I didn't give you the spirit of fear. You ought to get yourself up and tie yourself down and say, I'm going through. I may not get there when you do, but I'm going through. My days may be short. My system may be down. But one of these things that I know, that after a while, by and by, feel your faith and not your phobias. Thank you, Doc.